Scott. Thanks so much for allowing me to be part of the podcast.
Most people speak on their throat.
I think you'd be a superstar in the banking industry.
We have not seen any dead bodies in the dumpster.
Tell us one of the dumbest, stupidest things you've ever done in your business career.
You have entered the world of accounting, the place where business dreams and financial reality collide into exciting things like journal entries, debits and credits, and financial statements. EveryDay CPA podcast, helping you and your business better compete, succeed, and win. Good morning, business owners. It's early AM on a Saturday, and I know most of you are up and at 'em, ready to carpe diem. That's seize the days, if you don't remember your Latin. This is Kelly Coughlin, CEO of EveryDay CPA. One of our tagline themes at EveryDay CPA is we help business owners use debits and credits as weapons of mass competition. Frankly, I really want to say as weapons of mass destruction of their competition, but the politically correct police discourage me from saying anything that relates to violence. Even though we use Sun Tzu, a brilliant 5th century BC military strategist, as the foundation of our business strategy. They apparently are okay with that, but not weapons of mass destruction. Regardless, today I'm going to interview Casey Truby, founder and chief executive of Talk Accounting. Talk Accounting. Casey and his team have created a new accounting program that connects with QuickBooks, but the transactions, the journal entries, the debits and credits of mass competition, destruction, are entered into your QuickBooks not by some part-time bookkeeper that comes in twice per month, rather by you, the business owner, in the field, on the job. In a sense, it's just like Uber disintermediated the taxi business through their technology that connected a buyer and a seller directly without the need for a dispatcher. Casey's team has disintermediated the need for a bookkeeper to input many debits and credits of mass destruction. To be clear, I'm going to rephrase that. Casey's team has disintermediated the need for a bookkeeper to input many debits and credits. But to be clear, it doesn't completely eliminate the need for an accountant or a bookkeeper. Rather, it frankly makes better and more efficient use of their time. And from my perspective, it makes it a more interesting job. With that, I'll introduce Casey Truby at Talk Accounting. Casey, how are you today?
Kelly Coughlin, I am doing fine. I'm excited to be here. It's summertime out here in Arizona, so we're a little toasty today. But let's tell some people about mass destruction of their competition, or how about mass prosperity by using debits and credits as weapons. I love that sentence. That was fascinating.
Great. Well, before we get into your background, Casey, I have a couple questions for you on that. Tell me, what was the need that you saw in the marketplace, and how are you fulfilling that need with your Talk Accounting solution?
So I own a little training company out here, and I'm talking to one of my new college graduate kids, a little whiz kid that was sitting in there helping me do some programming. My wife walked in with the American Express bill, 12 pages long. She starts going through line by line. What was this for? What was this for? And we'd been through this little song and dance off and on for 40 years. And so I just started making stuff up because I couldn't remember what I spent money on 3 months ago. She walks out after a few minutes, and my employee sitting there looking at me says, "Did you just lie to your wife?" And I go, "Yeah, I just made all that up." And I said, "You know what's really funny? She knew I was lying the whole time." And the whole purpose of the whole idea was there that we can't remember what we did, but it's a constant problem not to record the business intent at the moment of a transaction. And this young gentleman said, you know, that artificial intelligence, voice recognition, I'll bet you if you just talk to your phone, this could be wiped out. And you wouldn't even have to have that little song and dance with your wife every month. So it was that moment of going through that uncomfortable, what was this for? Why'd you do that? For the 12th time this year, for the 40th year in a row, that I finally decided, we should do something about this and solve it for everybody.
Interesting. I was educated by the Jesuits, and your statement about lying. One of these philosophers said, if a tree falls in the woods, does it make a sound? And if nobody's there to hear it, does it make a sound? So I wonder, similarly, if you're lying to somebody and they know you're lying, is it a lie anymore?
It could be a conspiracy.
All right. Well, that sounds kind of interesting. So, Casey, I know we've talked a little bit about this being a great solution for businesses that are mobile, that spend a lot of time in vehicles or on job sites. I'm thinking truckers, contractors, the trades. Why is it? Is that a fair assessment that it's a good solution for those kind of businesses, and why is that?
Well, the biggest problem that the realtor, the Uber driver, the trucker, the salesman on the road, the one-person gig economy employee, self-employed has is that they are always moving. And they don't record the business intent of transactions. They always think, well, I'll get to this later. I'll save that receipt. I'll get the work finished when I have time. And that never happens. And as an accountant, you're well aware that what happens when we don't have good records and how susceptible we are to what's called a correspondence audit, where we get a letter from the internal rev and they want us to justify not only with receipts, proof of transactions, but business intent for why we went to the hotel in Dubuque, Iowa last August, or why we took somebody to lunch at Applebee's. And we can't do that because we lost the receipt and because we didn't take the time to write things down. And now the Internal Revenue Service is going to disallow that expense. And the average correspondence audit, which about 4% of the people are getting hit with right now every year, the average one is coming in with $3,000 and $5,000 and $7,000 tax bills because we didn't record the business intent at the moment of the event. And that's what Talk does. It gives you a simple process to get the business intent, get the receipt, and get it into a cash basis profit and loss statement right now that can import to QuickBooks if you're using QuickBooks or other software.
Okay, so let's just go through the process. Let's take a trucker. Picture a trucker. He gets in his truck at 6 a.m. His tank is empty, and he hasn't eaten breakfast yet. How does he use Talk Accounting?
And so at the beginning of the week, his income, let's say he's a leased driver, and his income came in, and it was directly deposited to his Talk Accounting MasterCard. We call it Talk Commercial MasterCard. And that card now holds his weekly income from last week's mileage. So he got paid so much per mile, and he got a wire transfer like he does every Friday. Okay, so now I get up in the morning and I fire up the truck, in which, I was a truck driver in my early 20s. So this is an area where I've got a little experience. So he fires up the truck and he's going to go into the pilot and get some ham and eggs. Now, when he comes out, or when the bill comes, the waitress is going to bring him the check. And normally he's just going to pay this check and then stick the receipt in his pocket. Now what's going to happen is he's going to use his Talk MasterCard, and as soon as he pays the bill, his phone is going to light up. And it's going to just say ping, and the trucker will look at his phone, and the phone's going to have a little message. It'll say, Jack, you're at the Pilot truck stop in Topeka, Kansas. You just spent $11.47. What was that all about? And all the trucker has to do is touch a screen, the recording starts, and he will say, I'm buying breakfast on my way to Denver with a hot load. And that's it. Now I have enough information about that transaction that my artificial intelligence can code it along with capturing the transaction data because we just used the Talk MasterCard. And that gives me a qualified transaction right into a cash flow spreadsheet that's part of the online banking. And if I'm a larger company, I can have that imported into QuickBooks, but a lot of people like truck drivers don't even need QuickBooks if they're recording contemporaneously the business intent of when they spend money.
So where does that spreadsheet go then? If they don't use QuickBooks, where does it go?
Interestingly enough, the spreadsheet is actually their online banking. And we all know what online banking looks like because we click and log on probably once or twice a day to find out if we can write another check. So we're looking at it all day long. But now instead of just having the total amount of money you have and a list of your checks or expenses that you've put money out on, you're also going to see revenue coming in on your online banking, and you're going to see all of your expenses coded to the particular category. So if I bought a tarp because I've got wood on the back and I can see it's going to rain up front 30 miles from here, we're in a rainstorm, I've got to tarp this load. Now I've got a categorized expense for the $300 I paid for the tarp. And if I'm buying fuel, it's categorized. If it's food, it's categorized. And all those things are treated differently at tax time anyway. So this is going to be a big help to my accountant, my tax preparer, because everything's in this spreadsheet, which is my online banking. And it can be exported directly to Excel so that it'll go right into QuickBooks or right into a tax software. And can you imagine the amount of money and time that's going to save that trucker to get that tax return done?
Yeah, so at EveryDay CPA, we work with a lot of truckers at tax time and tax resolution issues because they do have a tendency to kind of get into some problems because they're always on the road. So you're saying that we wouldn't have to have QuickBooks set up, that the transaction expense categories, those categories get set up at the online bank, or do they accept any categories at that point at the online bank?
Well, the online bank will accept any categories because we're actually an accounting firm that created this software, and then we help other accounting firms deliver it to their clients. And so it's modifiable. So if you're not using one of our standard 12 categories for a trucker, then you can go in and change it.
All right. So we have truckers that listen to this podcast and they say, hey, that sounds cool. They contact us at EveryDay CPA and we set up the account with you. They got to sign some things, I'm sure, because we're dealing with banking, but it's pretty straightforward, correct?
It's pretty straightforward, and we actually have the staff to walk the trucker right through it on your behalf so that we're going to show them how the deposits are made into their Talk Commercial MasterCard. We'll show them how to expense money and talk to the phone. We'll show them how to take a picture of the receipt that the waitress handed you so that we're lock and loaded, so that 2 years from now or 3 years from now, we get one of those correspondence audits. We're not going to be up all night worrying about it. We're not going to be in tax resolution because we have lock and loaded evidence of exactly why we spent money in Topeka, Kansas.
Great. And you gave us a special pricing at EveryDay CPA, so I want to thank you for that. And all our truckers and others, not just truckers, can take advantage of that. So thank you for that, Casey. I appreciate that.
We're excited to work with you, Mr. Coughlin.
Great. So I have one other question for you, Casey. Let's say you've got a trucker, he's in his hotel room, and he needs to pay some other bills that have accumulated while he's been on the road. Can he do that on the fly from his hotel room?
Well, the Talk Commercial MasterCard is a business checking account. It's not your personal account, so we'll get out of that commingling that you've been warned about before, Mr. Trucker. And if you're in that hotel and you've got to make your lease payments on your truck, you can either have that set up so it automatically drafts off the card. You can actually issue a check from your laptop or phone to make the lease payment at your convenience. And the same thing will hold true when you need to send money home at the end of the week for the rent and the diapers. So at the end of the week, the leftover money can easily be sent to your home checking account so that the personal bills can be paid. It'll operate exactly as if it were a checking account, but we'll do everything from your phone so that you don't have to worry about losing a checkbook or keeping the reconciliation or the account balance, because you'll see your account balance in real time right on your mobile phone all the time, as well as all of your transactions.
Well, this just seems like ideal for truckers, maybe Uber drivers, right? But certainly truckers. Man, these guys are always on the road.
For the truck driver, the Dash delivery driver, the Uber person, we're always running around with a glove box full of receipts. And as you well know, the average taxpayer pays several $1,000s a year in excess income tax because they can't remember where and when they spent money. That problem totally goes away because we're capturing the transaction at the exact moment it happens and shoving it to your phone and asking you to simply answer one question by talking out loud, the business intent. And if you don't tell us the business intent at that moment, I'm going to come back in 5 minutes and ask you again. I'm going to come back at 5 p.m. and ask you again. And I'm going to become your mother talking about vegetables. I am going to become a nag until you tell me why you spent $18 at the pilot truck stop.
Right. And if they have cash transactions, what should they do about cash transactions?
Now, we're going to strongly recommend that they do not have cash transactions, but they can use this to record the transaction in cash, and then it'll be up to the accountant to reconcile it at the end of the year for the tax return, because we won't be able to code the cash transaction.
What about a debit card withdrawal, cash withdrawal? Can they put a category to that?
They can do the debit card cash withdrawal. As soon as they take $200 out at the ATM, they're going to get a message on their phone. Hey, what was that $200 for? And
Excellent.
You'll be expected to talk to the phone and explain why you took $200 out and how we're going to code it back at the office, so that at the end of the year, you're not looking at 10 or 20 or 50 or 500 ATM withdrawals and trying to figure out what the Lord am I going to do with all of these.
See, I think that pays for that, because that's always a nightmare.
Yeah, Kelly, a lot of these ATM withdrawals are business-related expenses, but you're forced, when you're doing the return, to categorize them as owner draw or income because you don't have any contemporaneous notes about what the money was intended for.
Well, I know. I mean, like I go to New York 3 or 4 times a year, and I always take out cash for taxis. And, you're constantly having to keep track of these taxi receipts. But what I'd rather do is just take $200 out, taxis, transportation, ground transportation. So those are good things. Well, I congratulate you, Casey, on what you've designed and built here. If we've got a trucker or a contractor that wants to get going on it, I know you've got a select few of key and critical accountants like EveryDay CPA that's set up to do this. What's the best way for people to get going with you if they want to use Talk Accounting?
The very first thing they should do is simply call your office and say, we'd like to know a little bit more about this. Then you can send them to a short description video on the internet, of course, at talkaccounting.com. But we'd like you to send them to that site with your link. Send them a link. And then when they tell us that we'd like to try this, at that point, our at-home gig economy bookkeepers actually assist that trucker on your behalf to get that card set up, open the bank account with Sunrise Bank in Minneapolis, to train the trucker on exactly how to use this so that their tax return bills go down, their bookkeeping costs goes down, and they know exactly where they're at financially all the time. So we don't just give them software and turn them loose. We have a bookkeeper who will walk them through for the first 2 months, hand by hand by hand, to make sure that this is operational.
That sounds terrific. Casey, tell me a little bit about yourself. Give us your background.
Hey, I started accounting in 1969 when I was 16 years old. And so I know a little bit about this. I've not been a very good accountant. Mostly I'm a pretty good salesman and a pretty good software engineer. So I've tended to float around the accounting industry, writing software programs and developing other companies. But I've been an entrepreneur, a small business owner for 51 years, since I was 16 years old. And this is something we've worked on the last 4 years out here in Tucson with a group of young programmers out of the U of A. And they were specialists in artificial intelligence and voice recognition to create a methodology to easily convert my spoken voice into a coded accounting transaction, solving so many problems. And so after all those years of experience in owning one business or another and solving accounting and tax problems for clients, we finally have been able to come up with a simple way using that smartphone to get rid of that wallet full of receipts.
Great. Well, Casey, thanks for your time. And I look forward to working with you with some truckers and contractors and anybody else that's on the road that needs help classifying their expenses and minimizing the risk of an unfavorable IRS audit. So thanks a lot for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kelly, for having me. I really appreciate it.
Kelly, thank you very much.
Thank you, Kelly. We'll talk soon.
Thanks for tuning in to the EveryDay CPA podcast. We will see you next time.